Kembi, inventor. Susie, carbon trader. Abdul, food grower. Hester, finance minister. Zeke, dancer. Bonnie, Bonnie. What would I be? Today, when I speak about my city and energy, housing, public transport, service delivery, or poverty, it might just make you think of problems. Massive, familiar problems. What can we do about these problems? Tell people to switch off their geysers, use less water, recycle, catch the bus? These are questions we all ask, and they're important, but they might not help us much. Why? Because they only focus on the problems. And that's fine. We should problem solve. Sometimes. But my oral is about the big picture in my city. And in the big picture, problems are, well, a problem. My gran always said that people are like sunflowers. We grow in the direction we focus on. If we focus only on our problems, we end up with, well, problems. If we focus instead on what makes us feel alive, what excites us, we strengthen those areas until our problems become insignificant. It all comes down to choice. Think about the choices you made today. Some you thought about, and some were automatic. We make 100 little choices every day as individuals, organizations, and governments. And all our choices have an impact on our cities. So how do we create cities where the choices are the right ones? And what actually is a city? A bunch of people in malls, streets, bus stops, sewers and stadiums, McDonald's and graffiti. But what if I told you that many cities are ancient, and it's only in the age of the car, the oil age, that cities have looked like this? And what if I told you that South African cities will double in size in 20 years? I guess part of that expansion will be due to my children. And their children won't even know oil. We only have 15,000 days of it left. What does that do to your idea of a city? Or that, per capita, our cities make as much greenhouse gases as London. Before we won democracy in 1994, like other things, we didn't share our energy very fairly, which means now there's no one-size-fits-all with energy use. South Africa is officially the world's most unequal country. Did you know that half of city households earn less than 1,600 rand per month? What does that do to your idea of a city? And it's not the rich areas that are going to grow. It's the poor ones. We're trying to run a growing city on shrinking rates. Climate change will make it even harder to run cities. There'll be less water, less food, more floods, fires, storms, and diseases. And that's the reality of our cities. If we want to change our cities, we have to design them differently. It's not too late. Throughout history, cities have been places of innovation, revolutionary ideas, and leadership. And we South Africans, we're creative. Think solar cookers, mix-it, Shuttleworth, bicycle-powered boreholes. Which choice could we start with? Since it powers our cities, how about energy? Where does energy come from? Let's look at electricity. What's the story behind the switch? Do you realize in all this process, only 2% of the energy from coal becomes light. The rest is lost along the way, mostly in the form of heat. But that's not all that happens along the way. Toxic chemicals pollute surrounding farms, rivers, wetlands, animals, and people. Miners lose their lives, roads are damaged by the huge trucks, not to mention the masses of carbon dioxide released, contributing to climate change. Our cities' economies are built on cheap electricity, but it's only cheap if you ignore all these costs. Meanwhile, many South Africans are still dreaming of having a switch, in the dark, struggling with fire, paraffin poisoning, TB, hoping that tomorrow will bring what others have today. And as our country grows, how will we go about producing more energy? Are we going to go by drilling for more gas and oil? Or digging deeper for more coal? Nearly 90% of the energy we use in South Africa comes from fossil fuels. And I'm sure you guys have all watched the movies, and I hardly need to remind you that relying on fossil fuels will wipe out the human race. But it's funny how just knowing this does not change the way we act. As long as the TV is on and the cell phone is charged, we think we're fine, and that there are no choices to be made. Yet we have the power to change our choices. We have the power to switch each other on. Imagining what we want will lead us to do what we imagine. How about lifting our gaze from the earth and its finite and polluting energy sources to the sky, source of abundant energy in the form of wind and sunshine? Did you know every day the sun shines enough energy on us to satisfy global demand 15,000 times over? Now is the time for imagination. Imagine switching on possibility instead of problems. How do we get there? We need to take responsibility for our choices and for our cities. Choosing to be responsible is a gift I give myself. A gift that says I am the cause of what I do, what I have, and who I am. So what else can we be responsible for? Well, since nearly 60% of our city's energy is chewed up by transport, let's look at the shape of our cities and how we get around. Most people in this country move on foot. Half of our city populations spend more than an hour and a half every single day walking on roads or on the side of the roads, which is tiring and dangerous. Because half of our people walk every day, we need to give them safe passage. When we imagine roads, what could we see? Did you know it takes 3 times more energy to carry a person by car than by bus? Yet city design and clever adverts have us hooked on cars. And cars need to park. Whole buildings, whole blocks are being given over to parking. Imagine all that prime space being used for businesses or housing, growing food, parks, or playgrounds. New developments in our cities are required to accommodate parking. What if they were required to accommodate public transport access? Bicycle racks. We must create much more public transport. And how can we make it more appealing so that we want a bus ticket instead of a car? Could business create public transport allowances? What happened to the school bus? All of us could catch the ride of our lives. Imagine railways linking with roads, buses with taxis, bike racks at stations, scooter lanes, canals, and pedestrian ways. But before we get carried away, let's stop to consider, where do we go? We go to school, to places of worship, to the shops, to visit friends. Our parents go to work. Wouldn't it be nice if a city was a bit like a village with everything close by? That way, we wouldn't need so much transport in the first place. Some of our mothers spend up to 2 hours a day getting to work, and we hardly get to see them. Many of the poorest people are still forced to live far out in the margins of our cities. Nearly half of our parents are unemployed. How can they ever find work when they live so far from where the jobs are? Good public transport can change this picture, giving mothers, job seekers, the elderly, the lift they so desperately need. And where do we return to? Always home, because home is where the heart is. And when we come home, what do our homes look like? 7 out of 10 city homes are provided by government. We've got to provide a lot of houses, fast. So we put them up quickly as separate units because it costs more in the short term to integrate living spaces, to find out how people could coexist, to share amenities like play spaces and gardens. How could our planning encourage people to form communities instead of housing estates? Look at most homes in the city. Either they're scattered and fenced off or on top of each other and defenseless. And how does energy fit into this vision? We know that most homes are not exactly energy efficient. It is a tragedy that the poorest households spend a high proportion of their incomes on energy, and high-income homes guzzle far more energy than they need to. But at little cost, this could change. A home without a ceiling. I'm sure you know it well. In summer, there's a constant blast of hot air. In winter, everything is wet. Paraffin in particular causes condensation, and the roof drips. A ceiling makes a house livable, keeping it cool in summer and warm in winter. Homes could also face north to capture natural light and warmth. Solar water heaters pay back their investment within a few years and relieve owners of soaring bills. After all, the geyser guzzles half our electricity. Solar water heating also makes hot water a possibility for the poor, and the beauty is they can be rolled out and are easy to maintain. Thousands have already been installed, and they work. What else works? Energy-efficient light bulbs save loads of electricity and last for ages. Surely we should not be making the old kind, because this is really a case of cheap is expensive, and in the long run, expensive is cheap. This is true of our city economies too. If our businesses and industries run on old fuel-guzzling equipment, we won't remain competitive for long. We need to start thinking about new kinds of economic activities, activities that don't depend on large amounts of fossil fuels. You know, when I see adults in our neighborhood sitting on their steps, sighing to themselves, I sometimes wonder what they're thinking. They seem so resigned about the future, about my future. It's like the problems are too big. Their generation often seems to simply accept the bad stuff, to say, that's just the way things are. Yeah, we believe we've inherited a lot of problems, and we wonder whose fault it is, who will fix it, because we think our efforts are too small. My dad breaks the mold. He's the one who taught me that when one person is inspired to make a difference, however small, problems become possibilities. It's not enough if my dad's the only one who breaks the mold. The crisis we face in our cities needs government, business, and industry, all of us to make new choices. And so, I want to leave you with questions, not answers. What is the choice you're facing today? What inspires you about your role in our city's future? And what is the possibility you came here to create?
you.